What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? How are you guys doing? Today we're talking the Coros Pace 2. Damn, this little watch is impressive. It's the lightest watch that I've ever tested, and at $200, I think it's the best value GPS multi-sport watch that's on the market as of now, early 2021. So we'll get into all the things that I love about this watch, as well as some of the things that I think could actually be done better. Now, Coros did send me this watch for the purpose of this review. They aren't sponsoring this video, and they don't get to see any of this footage before you guys get to see it here on YouTube. They said that I could use this media loaner for about a week, and then I'd need to send it back. Sadly, I've been using it for a month, and this watch is still in perfect condition. But after a month, I just don't know if Coros is ever gonna trust me with another media unit again. Hopefully they will. But after a lot of swimming and biking and running, I have given this a fair amount of thought, and I have been looking for a lot of, little nitpicky things to complain about within this watch. And I think that I'm ready to share my opinion with you guys. But let's quickly go over some details of the product. The Pace 2 itself, comes in a white color or a dark navy color. Obviously I have the dark navy color, and it has the option of a silicone strap or a nylon strap. And the watch is extremely lightweight, but it is a little bit lighter if you choose that nylon strap version. I measured this watch at 36 grams, and the watch with the nylon strap weighs in at just 29 grams, so crazy light. Either way, it's still the lightest GPS watch that I've ever tested on this channel. But I think that I would go with the nylon strap just to see what that feels like as opposed to the silicone strap. It does have that 20mm band, so if you end up wanting something different later on, it's that quick release strap. You can just swap it out. Now the watch is waterproof up to 50 meters. Which is fantastic. I swam with it, I had no problem. The top glass across the top is that Corning glass, so it is scratch resistant, but it is not scratch proof. I would probably recommend putting some sort of screen protector on it, and I'll be sure to link something like that below in the description of this video. The watch really only has two buttons. It has, this digital crown, and then it has one bottom button. The bottom button generally goes back in the navigation, when you're navigating throughout the watch UI. The digital crown, of course, has that push to select, or, of course, scrolling up and down to scroll through long lists and setting menus and things like that. I would say generally, I'm not a huge fan of these digital crowns. I just don't think that they're as fast as physical buttons, especially when you kind of learn that muscle memory of where the buttons are and how you press them to make things go as you want them to. But after having worn this watch for a month, I would say that even with the digital crown, I've kind of developed a little muscle memory. You kind of have to swipe down about twice to kind of get it to unlock. And I found that okay. It also has a very small bezel just going around the trim. The screen looks like it almost goes edge to edge, but it doesn't quite get there. The screen itself is a 1.2 inch 240 by 240 pixel non-touchscreen display. It uses something called memory LCD, which I think is what's helping it get that super long battery life. And it's an always on screen. It's not one of those raise to wake or anything crazy like that. However, I will say that it does have an auto gesture backlight that will kind of light up as you turn your wrist sideways, which is nice. And that's something that you can actually adjust in the smartphone application. You can kind of set it to auto or on or off. Auto is supposed to kind of be respectful of when you're sleeping so that you don't have some sort of gesture while you're sleeping and it lights up and wakes you up. However, I did notice that going off quite a few times, and I went ahead and just turned it off. The watch is fairly small. It's 42 millimeters in diameter and only 11.5 millimeters in thickness. Remember, we always talk on this channel about how really the thickness of the watch is what makes it feel big and bulky. So this watch feels very small. Now, this watch has a built-in barometer. It has a built-in altimeter and a compass. It also is capable of connecting to ANT+ wireless devices as well as Bluetooth wireless devices. And before I go any further, I will just let you know that, as I was reviewing this, I was on version 2.34, and then just recently I upgraded to software version 2.35. So if you're watching this in the future, you can kind of have a feeling for some of the things that I might be overlooking or some of the things that haven't been added yet. As far as widgets go, right on the watch face itself, if you just scroll down, you scroll through a whole bunch of widgets. First one is just calories, and then heart rate, and the heart rate is kind of matching what you've done over the day. Atmospheric pressure, same thing, kind of what you've seen over the day. Elevation and temperature. I always love kind of collecting temperature data so that if I happen to go open water swimming or something like that, that I can report back to other people and let them know what the water temperature was. Also shows you sunrise and sunset information, and then notifications that have come from your smartphone. Now, as far as activity types that this watch provides, I will say that this watch is primarily a running watch, but there are a good bit of other activity types. So you've got running, you've got indoor running, you've got track running, which I think is actually really cool. Just gives you a bit more precise tracking when you're actually out there on the track. You've got biking, you've got indoor biking, pool swimming, which is good. You basically just set the pool length and it'll calculate distance accordingly. You've got open water swimming. You have triathlon, which is huge, right? At this price point, we don't typically see a triathlon activity option. You've got gym cardio, GPS cardio, rowing and indoor rowing. They have something that they call flat water, which is stand-up paddleboard, and then they have strength training activity types. So let's go ahead and dig into some of the things that I love most about this watch. First one, obviously, price. This watch comes in at only $199. Most of the triathlon watches that I test on this channel are in that kind of $400 to $600 range. So this is such a welcome break from like the crazy expensive triathlon gear. I will leave a link to the best price that I can find for this watch in the description of this video. I think it is a little bit hard to find this watch at the moment. I think it's selling out pretty quickly. Next thing that I love about this watch is the battery life. And it's just amazing on this watch. I think that I've had it for about 30 days or so. I really only charged it up once. It's probably due to be charged up again. And this is something that I think athletes really love about the Coros brand. They're very popular with ultra distance runners. Now, me personally, I didn't actually go out and do any sort of crazy ultra distance runs. I would say that I did a lot of swimming, biking, and running, but fairly intensive GPS battery activities. And I would say that I did about 10 hours per week or so, and I was very pleased with the battery life with this watch. But the claimed battery life is 20 days of regular use and 30 hours in full GPS mode. Now, they do have this Ultra Max GPS mode, which basically doubles the amount of GPS time that you can use. So any of those modes really, even without the Ultra Max, should be able to get you through a full Ironman distance triathlon or even a 100-mile ultra run. But the Ultra Max mode is interesting. To get into Ultra Max mode, if you're in the run mode of the watch, you can actually hold the lower right button until you get this extra settings menu pop up. And then you can kind of just navigate to the Ultra Max section and enable Ultra Max mode. Now, when you're in this mode, the GPS is only used 30 seconds out of every 2 minutes. And then it relies on the accelerometer and the previous running metrics to kind of predict your running distance and pace. I don't think that you're really ever gonna need this feature, but super nice to know that it's there if you do need it. But because it's there, I went ahead and tested it. For me personally, I actually noticed about 7 to 8% reduction in accuracy, which I would say, that's pretty substantial. I did a test on a fairly hilly area with a fair amount of tree coverage. So your results when you do these tests may vary, but I would expect that, when you run on a spot that's hillier or twistier, or your route has more hills and things like that, that you're gonna have less accurate results when you're using this Ultra Max mode. Now, in addition to battery life, one of the things that I love about this watch is track mode. So, if you know that you're going to be running around a track or you're doing a track workout, you can select track mode activity, and it'll take about a lap or so before the watch can properly register the track that you're running on, but you're gonna get a lot more accurate distance, and your GPS is gonna smoothly track around the track itself. So, if possible, I would suggest kind of doing your warm up on the track so that it can kind of register the track before starting your workout. Now, after that first lap, I was able to get really accurate lap distances using this mode. And I was comparing it to Garmin, which also has a track mode on some of their new watches, like the 745 and the 945. I was using the 745 in this case. But Coros will just kind of have this really nice pop-up alert letting you know that it has registered the track. That's something that I would love if Garmin did. But once Garmin has the track mode in its memory, it just kind of works perfectly right from the start and right from the get-go. So both of these watches kind of tackle track mode in a slightly different way, but I would say that, hopefully they'll learn from each other and we can kind of get the best of both worlds. And I know a ton of you guys are saying, why do you care about this mode? Do you really need GPS to tell you the distance when you're running around a track and you know the distance that you've run? That's a great point. But most of us are wearing these watches, on the track no matter what. And I really do find it annoying when my watch is providing me or even uploading data with the wrong distance. And even further than that, some of you guys are out there doing 24-hour track runs, and it's so easy to lose count of how far you've gone when you're running those crazy distances. I can't even keep track of the high schoolers that I coach when they do their 2-mile races. But anyway, I think that it is a nice to have feature. Maybe it's something that you don't care about, but I really like it, and I wish this feature were on more and more watches going forward. Now, this watch also has a triathlon mode, which is amazing. I don't have that much to say about it. I did one mock triathlon and it worked as expected. I hit my split button and the splits recorded my time. The distance looked pretty accurate for my triathlon and everything worked as expected. I just think it's fantastic that they're giving us the opportunity to have a triathlon activity on a watch that's so reasonably priced. Now, another feature on this watch that a lot of people are probably talking about is running power. Most GPS sports watches on the market really don't provide an estimate of running power. And this budget-friendly Coros Pace 2, has this really interesting metric. And I think it's a metric that can be really beneficial to a lot of athletes. Now, the idea of running power is that it's a value that represents, how much external force you're applying to propel you forward. So, you take bigger, longer, faster strides, you're putting out more power. And, even if you're going slower because you're going up a hill, your power metric will better represent the actual amount of work that you're doing, compared to a metric like pace. Pace would just show you slowing down when you're climbing a hill, even though you might actually be working significantly harder. So power has a lot of benefits, when compared to something like pace, or even when you're kind of comparing it to something like your heart rate. With heart rate, you have what they call cardiac drift, and that just meaning that you have a higher heart rate towards the end of a race after you've done a lot of work compared to your heart rate when you were kind of keeping a comfortable pace at the beginning of a race. Still a great metric, still a very important metric, but nothing like power where your number really kind of is what it is and it represents the amount of force that you're actually using to propel yourself forward. Now, I don't think that there's a great way to judge power accuracy, between all of these different watches and power pods and things like that, because these watches, they're really just providing an estimate of running power. And that is the case for really all of the products on the market, including the Stride Pod, including Polar watches, including the Garmin devices. None of these watches or devices are really using like strain gauges to measure the force that you're exerting. They're mostly using the accelerometer, the barometric pressure, all of that stuff, along with the algorithm that they've created to estimate the amount of power that you're putting out. So I think it's a useful metric. obviously, but I also think that no one device is doing it correctly versus another device. So I don't really compare power. If my power is 50 watts higher on one device versus another, I don't think that one of them are correct. What you do want to see is that, you know, as you go up a hill, if your pace doesn't decrease, the power does increase, or at least something along those lines. But I love the fact that Coros included running power on this Coros Pace 2 watch. Really nice metric to have. Another thing that I love about this watch, really in the whole Coros ecosystem, is the Coros smartwatch application. I personally think it's fantastic. But real quickly, there's basically 4 main tabs on the application. First one being that general daily details. That's stuff like your heart rate and your steps and your sleep. The second one is your workout history, and you can dive into all the metrics of each specific workout. The third one is this personal tab, which gives you the option to create training programs or strength programs targeting 15 different muscle groups. And it kind of has this little animated demonstration thing. And then, you know, as for those training programs, you can either download training programs from Coros's website, or you can build your own. So very nice that way. And the last tab is specific to connected Coros devices. So again, this is another spot where you can kind of hop in, dive into the actual device itself, and make changes to settings. Now, if you guys have watched this channel, you guys know that I do love tracking sleep metrics. And this watch does have basic sleep metrics. It'll show you stuff like your heart rate, light sleeping, deep sleeping, any awake time that you have. The sleep tracking, I would say, you know, it doesn't provide nearly as in-depth analysis or metrics, you know, as something like a Polar watch, but it is still really nice to have. And maybe that's something that Coros can work on in the future. I don't have a ton of complaints about this watch, especially because it's at this price point, but there's definitely a couple of minor things in addition to sleep metrics that I'd love to see changed. For example, you know, when it comes to heart rate monitor accuracy, you know, I would say that this watch is okay, but it's not perfect. Here, you know, in this example, I'm comparing the optical heart rate monitor from the back of this watch to the Polar H10 chest strap connected to the Garmin 745. If you watched my last video from last week, you'll actually understand, you know, why this is not a fair comparison. But real quickly here, I do see a few spikes just here and there when I look at this optical heart rate monitor data. Now, switching over to GPS accuracy, really, you know, the distance or the pace was really never very far off, with the exception of when I had that Ultra Max battery mode set. You know, here you can see that I'm running here and it doesn't really track quite as tightly as something like the 745 or the 945. When you look at kind of like the satellite view here, I'm running along the lake, as I always do with these tests, and I'm making a few turns, and there's pretty decent tree coverage here. Again, you know, looking at that Ultra Max mode, the extended battery life mode, we can see that the GPS accuracy gets a little bit crazy. And the blue line here is the Pace 2 just in its regular battery mode. And the purple is the Ultra Max mode. And obviously, you know, I didn't go running through 3 houses here or loop around their backyards or anything crazy like that when I was out running that day. You know, I thought about it, but I decided probably not a good idea. And, you know, another complaint that I have about this watch is the lap swimming activity. And this is a complaint that I have about a lot of the watches that I test. And, you know, it has no drill mode. It has no way for me to set aside the distance that I've done, you know, when I'm either doing some sort of drill set or some sort of kick set. And unfortunately, I've been doing a fairly large amount of kick sets recently. So, you know, right now on my Strava account, it's really only showing about half the distance that I've actually swam. Another thing that I would love to see Coros change would just be kind of extending and expanding all of their data field options, and really kind of letting you select and choose how you want to display that data. You know, I think Garmin really is kind of the king in this department. For example, you know, on Garmin, if you want to, you know, see how many calories you've burned in terms of beers, you can download a plugin from their Garmin Connect IQ app and slap it on there and it'll work. I would love to see Coros kind of open it up to some developer resources and really kind of open up your options with regards to how many different data fields and things like that that you can use on the watch. Now, lastly, my last complaint would just be the watch design. I mentioned that I don't love the digital crown, but I would also say, that I don't love the way that this watch looks compared to a lot of the other GPS watches on the market. I think it does look a bit plasticky. It looks like a more affordable watch, which it is. With all of those annoyances, is this a watch that I would recommend? Absolutely. The only person or reason I might suggest you hold off would be, if your primary sport is something like swimming, there might be better watches on the market for you. But if you're primarily a runner and a triathlete, then this watch really is the best value GPS multisport watch on the market as of now, as of early 2021. It really checks all of the boxes. Decent heart rate accuracy, decent GPS accuracy, a triathlon mode, running power data, an excellent mobile application that really allows you to dig into not only athletic metrics, but also general daily wellness related metrics like sleep and activity, energy. So, if you are on the fence about this watch, I would say don't hold back. I think that this watch is an amazing value. And as always, don't forget to get out there, swim, bike, run, rinse, and repeat it all over again. And we will see you guys on the next video.